Welcome back to the hills. If you were tuned in to the last podcast, I was speaking about turkey scouting here in the mountains of Appalachia, and I spoke about how I was going to get out here and do a little scouting myself and bring you guys along so you could actually see what it is that I look for while I'm out here. So currently I'm on a piece of public that I was speaking of in that podcast, one of my favorite places to hunt. And although I know 99.9% of the time where the turkeys are going to be, I make sure I get out here and I check and make sure the property hasn't changed, the state hasn't done any management that I'm not aware of, or in this case where Hurricane Helene came through last year, just to verify what kind of damages may or may not have been done, and get eyes and hopefully ears on turkeys and turkey sign. So hang out with us today and this weekend while we go around and get some scouting done. Alright, so as I was mentioning on the podcast, road scouting is one of the most beneficial things. I've been driving past this piece of public, and what I had originally come out here to scout, I am changing my mind on, because just from driving around the fields, I'm seeing that they have cut fields that they typically don't cut. They've left fields planted that they typically don't leave planted. So just from years past, going back on historical data like I was talking about, I know that when certain fields are cut and certain fields aren't cut, the turkeys act a certain way. So we're gonna drive around a little bit more, check out a couple more locations, and then we're probably gonna come out and start seeing if we can hear any turkeys going up to roost, or even seeing some go to roost. But this is exactly what I was getting at in the podcast about not just getting locked in that you have to put your boots on the ground, and getting some time in the vehicle and learning what, especially with public land, what your local game management is doing to the property. So, food for thought. Hope it helps somebody out there. But, like I said on there, nothing replaces boots on the ground. I mean, yes, we saw turkeys while driving. I was able to see the fields and the property and the way the property was laying. But the turkeys we saw were on private at the time. Seeing the fields are cut does not mean inherently that the turkey's going to be in there. So I'm going to get on my feet. I'm going to walk. I'm going to look for track. I'm going to look for scat. I'm going to look for the turkey itself, feathers. Think about it this way. If you live in a house, you're going to leave some sort of sign that you've been there. No matter how tidy of a person you are, there's going to be some sort of sign that you're there. A hair, a dirty dish in the sink, an open container of milk in the refrigerator. Whatever it is, there is a sign that you're there. So think about that when you're scouting your land, that's the turkey's home. He has to leave some sort of sign that shows where he's at. So if you're not seeing something, he's probably not there, and you need to move on until you find what you're looking for. So along with road scouting and boots on the ground, looking for sign, looking for the turkeys as you saw, one of the other features that I really advise to anybody getting into turkey hunting, this is your first season and you're scouting, is evening roosting sessions. As you can see right now, the sun's going down behind me. I know from years past that this is a place where turkeys like to roost. What I would suggest is get into a zone where it makes sense for a turkey to roost at. So if you look right over my shoulder here, if you can see down through this valley, there's all these pine trees, and they've got flat limbs on them, And I've actually had a turkey roost in this tree right here. I ended up killing him the morning after I saw him roost there. As you can see, I'm basically parked in a parking lot here on the public land right at the road. And what I'm going to do is once the sun goes down and I know that a turkey should be on a limb, is I'm going to pull out my owl hooter and I'm going to see if I can get one to gobble for me. From that point, I can go in to a mapping tool, whether it's Onyx or Google Maps or Spartan Forge or even a paper map, and I'm going to actually pinpoint where that is. Now, the more times that you do that, and as I was talking about in the podcast, the more times that you document it, you're actually going to start picking up on traits on where these turkeys are liking to roost at. And the more and more you do this, the more and more familiar you're going to become with roosting habits of these gobblers. All this will change season to season. So if you're trying to do this in the fall, it's probably not going to be the same as the spring. Or if you're doing this in January, it's not going to be the same as March like it is here in North Carolina. So keep that in mind as you do it. Don't get discouraged if the sign that you were seeing back in the fall is not the same sign that you're seeing now in the spring or even in the summertime or wintertime, because as the environment and the habitat changes around the turkey has to adapt to it, to the food sources, to the habitat itself. Which brings me back to what I was saying in the podcast of this will all become habitual, and you're going to be doing this consistently, consecutively, and it starts just becoming ingrained into you where it's not something that you actually have to set time aside to specifically go do it. Some of my most efficient scouting actually comes while I'm hunting, right? Like I'm hunting a turkey and I'm, let's just say, burning a road to try to get to where I think a turkey's gonna be, and I see a turkey track, or I hear a gobble, or scat, or whatever the case is. I pick up on these little notes, on these little cues, on these little keys without even thinking about it, and pull my phone out and jot it down on Onyx, and so on and so forth. So hang out a little bit longer. We're gonna see if we can get one to gobble tonight. I hope you guys are getting some good information out of this video. All right, we got 2 hens roosted. That's exactly what I was talking about with those flat limbs that come out about 20 feet. They love being in them, but you see those 2 hens, I don't know if you can see both of them, but they're not all the way in the bottom of the valley, but they're definitely not way up on top of the hill, staying out of the, it's pretty windy conditions this evening, and they're trying their best to stay out of that wind. So, as you can see, granted, I'm not going to hunt this bird in the morning, but I've wrapped it all up. I've used my road scouting, my boots on the ground. I've used my historic data. I've tied it all together, and I've confirmed that whenever opening day gets here, it's still worth me hunting this particular side of the property. That way, when it gets here, I'm not just chasing my tail trying to find a gobble, a turkey. I know that I can get in here early on opening morning, and I'm going to be somewhere in the game. I might not be knocking out a home run, but at least I know that I'm not just playing for an empty stadium, if you know what I mean. I hope you got something good out of this video. If you did, hit that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe, and until next time, see you on the hill.